Today we will be discussing on Management of Library and Information Center, Paper 5, Module 2, MIS System Analysis and Control, Unit 14, Monitoring and Control Techniques. This unit introduces you to various controlling or monitoring techniques in libraries and information centers. In every organization, control is important, but in larger organizations, it is particularly important as it provides managers with facts in a comprehensive form and at the time when it is required. The controlling or monitoring processes are usually interpreted as restrictions or restraints on the system, but in the actual sense, they are nothing but guides for the organization and indicate how an organization is progressing towards meeting its established goals. These techniques help managers at all levels to be aware of the various services available, how to effectively carry out the services, at the same time reporting on the status of particular job. Those are very much important for the managers or librarians. So for that these techniques are useful. Control is concerned with locating operational weaknesses and taking corrective actions. It helps to know whether or not the planned activity is being effectuated, and if not, to take remedial actions. Planning is determining what should be done, and controlling or monitoring is assuring what is done. In every organization, control is important, but in larger organization, it is particularly important as it provides managers with facts in a comprehensive form and at the time when it is required. The controlling and monitoring processes are usually interpreted as restrictions or restraints on the system, but in the actual sense, they are nothing but guides for the organization and indicate how an organization is progressing towards meeting its established goals. This unit introduces you to various controlling or monitoring techniques in libraries and information centers. These techniques help managers at all levels to be aware of the various services available, how to effectively carry out the services, and help to achieve predetermined goals of an information organization. So, what are controlling? Controlling usually refers to checking, verifying, testing, regulating, exercising, restrain, or directing influence in order to successfully carry out a management process. Monitoring involves looking for faults, performing of duty, giving advice and instruction, and exercising caution. Techniques of monitoring and controlling. You all know that planning and organizing are necessary management functions in any information organization, but they alone do not accomplish any result. You must use the plans you developed for the organization you established to get something done. What makes you accomplished is a monitoring process or a monitoring technique. So, there are various techniques. Various techniques are operations research, OR in short form, management information systems, MIS, management by objectives, MBO, network analysis, budgeting as a monitoring technique, and monitoring team or consultants. So, coming to operation research, OR. The operations research was born during the 1939 to 45 as an aid to military decision making. After the war, it was rapidly applied to industrial production and eventually spread to other spheres of management. Operations research can be described as a scientific approach to decision making. So, this is a kind of scientific approach. Scientifically, we will take the decision that involves the operations of a organized system. As the name implies, operations research involves research on operations. So, it is nothing but research on operations. This says something about both the approach and the area of application of the field. Thus, operations research is applied to problems that concern how to conduct and coordinate the operational activities within an organization, or as it is usually referred to, has been very successfully applied to information fields. It is a problem solving activity. So, this is nothing but a problem solving activity which is capable of developing new techniques as situations demand. Also, it is applicable not only to the routine problems of an organization but also to strategic planning and to problems of design. It is thus considered to be one of the major monitoring techniques of management with a constraint that it can be applied to situations only where mathematical models can be prepared. So, this technique is not suitable for all situations, only where the mathematical models can be prepared. There, this technique is very much successful. Operations research can be defined as the application of mathematical models that permit comparisons of alternative courses of action and the determination of the course that will bring maximum results. The purpose of OR is to aid the manager in decision making and in monitoring an activity. It usually uses an interdisciplinary approach. So, there are certain characteristics of operation research. Operations research uses mathematics and mathematical models to assist management decision making. It is important here to remember the OR cannot substitute management, but what it can do is to present the management with alternative solutions to problems and so allow judgment to take place on sound scientific and mathematical grounds rather than on the basis of experience and intuition. OR is useful only where all the elements of a problem can be quantified and expressed mathematically. It is a problem in solving where there is sociological or psychological elements are available. The essential characteristics of OR are as follows. A problem solving activity uses scientific method, that is formulation, testing and refinement of models, uses models to estimate alternative courses of action, and then the most preferred consequence can be identified and implemented, involves experimental manipulation of models, uses mathematical techniques like linear programming, probability theory, queuing theory, network analysis. You have already been told that the approach of operations research is that of scientific method. The process therefore begins by carefully observing and formulating the problem and then constructing a scientific model that attempts to abstract the essence of the real problem. It is then hypothesized that this model is a sufficiently precise representation of the essential features of the situation so that conclusions obtained from the problem are also valid for the real problem. The usual phases of a typical OR study are the following. First stage is formulating the problem. Second stage is constructing a mathematical model to represent the system under study. Then third stage is deriving a solution from the model. The fourth stage is testing the model and the solution derived from it. The fifth stage is establishing control over the solution. And sixth stage is the final stage. It is putting the solution to work, that is implementation. The entire process is a cyclic one, that is the work team begins with an elementary formulation of the problem and the construction of as simple a model as is possible to capture the essential features. This leads to a solution system that can be used in an experimental way in the organization to see how it affects the original problem situation. This usually leads to a much better clarification of the problem, enrichment of the model, refinement of the system, and a new round of experimentation in the organization. The entire process is a cyclic one, that is, the work team begins with an elementary formulation of the problem and the construction of as simple a model as is possible to capture the essential features. This leads to a solution system that can be used in an experimental way in the organization to see how it affects the original problem situation. So, this usually leads to a much better clarification of the problem, enrichment of the model, refinement of the system, and a new round of experimentation in the organization. The process is intended to continue in this way to evolve into a fully satisfactory control of the operations under study and to also lead to higher levels of management decision making. Because of the hierarchical nature of such decision making in an organization, it is possible to begin at various problematic situations and arrive at the same level of understanding and control. Then we are coming to another technique which is known as management information system, which is in short form called MIS. MIS can be defined as a normal system to provide all levels of management with all the relevant information they need with which to make appropriate decisions for the total control of an organization. It is therefore one of the best monitoring technique in the management of libraries and information centers, as the key members of an organization are provided with manual or automated data information used in its various operations. With increasing size and complexity of present organizations, many MIS reports are produced by computer. However, a computer is not a prerequisite to a MIS. The definition emphasizes that an MIS applies to all levels of management, has and is linked to an organizational subsystem, functions to measure performance, monitor progress, evaluate alternatives, or provide knowledge for change, is flexible both internally and externally. Meaning of MIS. In management information system, there are three important terms. One is management, the other one is information, and the third one is system. So, management. Management makes decisions regarding planning, operating, and controlling. Information consists of orderly data used for making decision, and systems for integration of all activities of an organization through exchange of information. Need for management information system. Information system involves personnel, equipment, services, integration, and objectives, and the emphasis remains on information because the manager must have information concerning each of the aspects to function. As a decision maker, the manager himself or herself is a processor of information. He or she must have the ability to store, process, or retrieve or display whether information is needed for decision making. To keep ahead, today's managers must keep abreast of his or her information requirements and evolve systems to deliver that information. The information needs of managers vary according to their level with management hierarchy, that is the top, middle and lower level management. To facilitate the decision making process in an organization by providing all levels of management with accurate, timely, selective information that assists the manager in determining a specific course of action, to provide for the objective performance of all relevant elements of the organization, such as relating current operations to previously established plans. Effectiveness of each of the major operating divisions, departments of the organization. Effectiveness of each functional elements. Accomplishments and contributions of individual professionals in meeting the objectives of the organization. So, what are the objectives of MIS? To facilitate the economic and efficient production of reports presenting the working of each department or division of the organization, to provide the means for giving direction and action to the manager's formal written statement of duties and responsibilities. And the fifth one is to facilitate the process of planning and control for all levels of management. Now here comes the characteristics of MIS. It is selective and relevant in nature with emphasis on the specific problem under consideration by the decision maker. It is integrated in such a manner that functional elements or departments of an organization and the various levels of management are considered in relation to each other, so that the impact of decisions made for one element can be measured and interpreted in terms of its effects on the organization as a whole. It represents a synthesis of the information needs of each manager based on his or her organizational position, responsibilities, and decision making authority in the organization. It must differentiate between the kinds of information required for management planning and management control processes in terms of time and organization. It must be responsive to changes caused by shifts in the organizational structure of the organization. Process of MIS. MIS process involves several steps consisting of information gathering, processing and analysis for decision making. With the increasing size and complexity of modern day information centers, a majority of MIS reports are being produced by computers. But it has to be remembered that computer is not a prerequisite to MIS. So, what are the steps? Steps 1 is finding out the information needs of all managers. The second step is writing down the objectives of the MIS and the anticipated benefits. Third one is preparing a plan for the design of the MIS, including schedule and estimated costs. Fourth one is preparing a rough or gross design for the MIS that appears to be practical and that will in all likelihood achieve the objectives established. Step 5, preparing the detailed design. It requires refining and expansion of the gross design, detailed description of management reports and a detailed description of the follow-up information are required. A data bank or list of all data to be kept in files must be prepared. A procedures manual must be prepared to tell how the MIS works and what the personnel involved must do. The computer center must also be designed and software or programs made available. Sixth step is putting the new MIS into operation. Prior testing may be desirable to see that all parts work together. Imagine the problems that could arise in an organization in the old system were abandoned and a computer program in the new system did not work. And seventh step is monitoring and maintaining the new system. That is, needed changes in procedure or the structure of the data files must be made from time to time. The MIS must also be changed to meet changing inputs and changing management needs. Every bit of information required for decision making is available. So, this is one advantage. Then, gaps in the information get deleted, incomplete information gets completed, incorrect information gets corrected. This is the another advantage. Then, decision making becomes more accurate, less risky and rather easy. So, the fourth advantage is two-way information flow gets established, that is manager downwards and bottom upwards. And there is another advantage, that is, as updating of information is a continuous process, monitoring of every operation becomes easy and immediate measures, corrective or otherwise, may be taken. Trend analysis and forecasting becomes easy and the exercise of long range planning becomes less difficult. MIS presents outputs in the form of reports and documents to different management levels. Reports of documents are usually quantitative or subjective in nature so that they can aid decision making. At times, interpretation, narration and decision are also given to aid the management to take correct decision at the appropriate time. The reports or documents are not too detailed with statements, graphs and at times with little briefing. Costs of MIS. Cost involved for this technique is there are hardware costs, software costs, personnel cost, maintenance cost. These are the four types of costs. So, hardware. As MIS are developed, it is found that the hardware existing with an organization is inadequate for the task. Therefore, the computer resources, terminals, disk and memory size, etc. need to be evaluated to determine if they will serve the purpose. Then comes software. Each aspect of MIS will require programming. Sufficient time is required for testing the programming phase of the MIS. This is very time consuming and thus expensive. Then personnel. The computerized MIS is a complex and sophisticated management tool. The personnel required to develop such systems have to be experienced and well versed with all aspects of the system as MIS requires interrelating all the time. Such projects thus involve a heavy cost with respect to personnel if new personnel are to be recruited. Maintenance. An important aspect in development of any MIS is ongoing maintenance all the time as up to date and timely information is required always. It is essential that a strong maintenance team to be attached to the system. This leads to very high cost. And what are the pitfalls of MIS? The job is normally done by computer specialists and or system analysts, but it requires the involvement of all engaged in the management. Lack of resources, lack of trained personnel, lack of planned approach, duplication of effort, time lag, the volume of data at times makes it humanly impossible to be accurate the efficient. Useful and necessary data at times available but often in a form or location where it is difficult to retrieve. So, we are coming to the third technique for control. This is management by objective. Management by objectives in short form it is called MBO. Management by objective, popularly called MBO, refers to a formal procedure in which each manager pair, that is a manager at any level and his immediate superior, periodically reach mutual agreements on specific and measurable goals or objectives which the subordinate is expected to attain in a determined period. A written record is made of these objectives. The MBO is thus a monitoring technique which has effectively used to integrate individual and group goals of a library or an information center. So, what are the features of MBO? MBO is basically a process whereby an information manager, here librarian, and his subordinates work in an information center or library jointly. Identify its common goals. Define each individual's major area of responsibility in terms of results expected of him or her. Use some measures as guides for operating a unit of the library information center and assessing the contribution of each of its members. These measures are the goals jointly established by the manager, subordinates and agreed upon in advance. These goals emphasize either output variables or intervening variables or some combination of both. At the end of predetermined period, the subordinate's performance is reviewed in relation to present goals. Both the superior and subordinate participate in this review evaluation. If after evaluation it is found that there is some discrepancy between the work planned and the work accomplished, steps are suggested to overcome the problems or to make necessary adjustment in the original plan. This sets the stage of the determination of objectives for the next time. MBO thus implies managing by properly identifying the objectives of an organization. Objectives of MBO. Management is the art of getting work done through the people, and with MBO, everyone in the organization gets to know what the objectives and targets are and accepts them as worth achieving. The organization and the individuals work in the same direction. The objectives of the organization are clearly defined and communicated to all. The objectives of the organization can be reviewed periodically for adjustment if necessary. Management can control information in a form and at a frequency which makes far more effective self-control and better and quicker decisions. It clarifies with each manager the key results and performance standards must achieve. It helps to strengthen a manager's motivation. What are the steps for setting up MBO? Step 1 is making a complete study of the entire library or the information center and setting the common goals for the entire organization. To achieve goals of the organization, appropriate changes in the organization structure to be made. These changes include changes in titles, duties, relationships, authorships, responsibility, span of control and so forth. The superior sets down goals for his or her subordinates. Subordinates also propose goals for the job and select the areas in which they must be effective during the proposed period. Superior and subordinates sit together, discuss the objectives and reach joint agreement on a subordinate's goal to be achieved by him or her during a stated time period. In other words, the goals are jointly established and agreed upon in advance. What is to be accomplished should be compared with what is being accomplished throughout the time period. This helps in making necessary adjustments. Also, unattainable and inappropriate goals can be discarded at this stage. This helps in checking wastage of resources. The performance of all the subordinates is formally reviewed against their MBO plan at predetermined times during the plan. Performance of the entire organization to be reviewed with respect to the objectives initially stated. In case of discrepancies, the entire process is to be repeated from the first step. Benefits of MBO. Concentration individually as a team on the really important profit-oriented tasks. Better management training to managers at a lower cost. Improvements in management control and management performance standards. Improvement in moral and sense of purpose in personnel due to their involvement. Identification of personnel with potential so that reliable management plan for future be made. Identification of problems that prevent high performance and improvement plan to solve them. Coordinates the efforts of various departments, divisions of an organization. Better organizational structure with more effective delegation of responsibility and accountability. But there are limitations of MBO also. Although information organizations are benefited by MBO in many ways, there are certain drawbacks. So what are those drawbacks? Management working by objectives may follow too rigid a pattern in thinking and action. There is always a need for flexibility in management thinking, and provisions of written objectives should not be allowed to affect them adversely. MBO has also been accused of demotivating people where it has been applied ruthlessly and of upsetting the balance of activity in an organization where it has been persuaded too single minded. One more problem with MBO is that librarians usually like to work in teams, whereas MBO concentrates very much on the leader of the team or the individual. Lastly, one major limitation MBO that overshadows all others is the anyone introducing new planning concepts needs one or more trained advisors, and people of high potentials from middle or lower level management can be trained and tested for some time before fully entrusting them with the job responsibilities. Now, network analysis. Network analysis is a system which plans large and small projects in an information center by analyzing the project activities. Network analysis is another kind of technique for control. So, there are various types of network analysis techniques such as program evaluation, review technique, critical path method, program evaluation procedure, manpower allocation resource, graphical evaluation review technique, and project control system. Commonly used network analysis techniques in libraries and information centers are PART or CPM. PART is program evaluation and review technique, and CPM is critical path method. Control is concerned with locating operational weakness and taking corrective actions. It helps to know whether or not the planned activity is being effectuated, and if not, to take remedial actions. Planning is determining what should be done, and controlling or monitoring is and assuring what is done. We have learned some techniques of control such as OR or operations research, management information system, management by objective, network analysis, etc. So let us discuss some questions. So what are the benefits of management by objective from individual manager point of view? It is to improve decision making, less frustration, greater opportunity to make a personal contribution and to accept more responsibility, improve communication with other personnel, recognition of achievement by self and superiors, increased opportunity for personal growth, more equitable material rewards and promotion plans. Name some network development techniques, and these are program evaluation review technique, critical path method, program evaluation procedure, manpower allocation resource, graphical evaluation review technique, and project control. What kinds of skills are required for MIS manager? Knowledge of the total organization and its objectives, availability to communicate effectively orally and in writing, relationship with top management, relationship with subordinates, knowledge of information processing and data communication techniques, ability to design and judge the decision of the system. What are various kinds of activities in network analysis? There are three kinds of network analysis: critical activity, non-critical activity, and dummy activity. And what are the various phases of our operation research? Formulating the problem, constructing the mathematical model, deriving a solution from the model, testing the model and the solution derived from it, establishing control over the solution, putting the solution to work, that is implementation. Thank you.